our cybersecurity awareness training event. This is a really great session for you to equip your staff and yourself with the knowledge and tools to combat all the latest security threats and protect your company's digital assets. As we move into 2025, there are new things emerging. There are things that are still prominent in the security spectrum that we're going to discuss today. So we'll learn how to respond to these cyber threats effectively. Introducing our speakers today, we have the lovely Andy Roberts, who is Training and Learning Specialist. Hello, Andy.
Good morning, everybody.
We've got Ricky Killer, who's a Regional Sales Director at CSG, and myself, Marketing at CSG. So good morning, everyone. Here's a little brief overview of what we're going to learn today and discuss. So we all know what Phish Threat is now. We've gone into some detailed Phish Threat training and how to identify and avoid these phishing attacks. We're also going to learn more about social engineering and how cyber criminals defend against these, because it's becoming far more of a common tactic. We're going to learn the latest prevention tactics and learn the most effective strategies. And these are changing all the time. So that's why it's important to update your knowledge and keep aware of all of the latest impacts. And then we're going to learn a bit about how CSG can help you with your cybersecurity needs.
A bit about CSG and who we are. We're a trusted IT provider to over 400 SMEs. We've been established since 1985, so it makes us one of the oldest IT companies in Wales. We have multiple offices in Bridgend, Bristol and Exeter, and currently we turn over £5 million. As well as cybersecurity, which is a big growing part of our business, we also provide services for IT support, telephony, obviously backups, disaster recoveries as well. Certifications, we're Cyber Essentials Plus. We're also for a Sophos reseller. We're a gold partner. And for Microsoft, we're a solutions designated partner. And also for other backup solutions, we're a Datto gold partner and an HP preferred partner as well.
So again, we're introducing Andy Roberts, our trainer, who's Training and Learning Specialist. And Andy, if you don't mind, we're just going to say we're an expert in technical enablement, onboarding programs and skills development. So if anyone wants to learn, obviously, the latest skills, this is the right place to do so this morning. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Eve, and thank you, Ricky. Thanks for that lovely introduction. Thank you to everybody joining us this morning. As the guys have said, my name is Andy Roberts. I'm here to talk to you about cybersecurity this morning. We have about an hour's worth of presentation to go through. Hopefully be a little bit sort of interactive as we go through. There'll be a few opportunities for you to think about what we're actually discussing. There will be time for a Q&A section at the end, but we will try and hold off those questions until the end of the session, if that's okay, just to make sure that we get through everything in a nice, timely manner. This is the agenda for the session today. So a quick introduction to start off about cybersecurity. What is cybercrime and why is it so successful? We'll look a bit at passwords, how we can create strong passwords and how we can try to reduce the chances of us falling victim to one of these cyber attacks. We'll look at social engineering a little bit. We'll look at how threats are evolving. And then we'll have a look at better security, things you can do within your organization to try and reduce that risk of falling victim to one of these attacks. So why is cybercrime so successful? Well, first of all, cybercrime itself is a broad term that covers damage or disruption of data, theft of money or personal financial data, or it could be fraud, business disruption, or even just reputational harm. As our personal lives and our businesses move online, there's a growing number of opportunities for cyber criminals who have at their disposal an expanding set of tools that they can use to try and cause damage to us. It's hard to really kind of comprehend the scale of this issue as well, both in our work lives and in our personal lives. We all need to have an understanding of the impact of cybercrime and the sorts of things that we can do to help us reduce the risk of falling victim to cybercrime. What is the total cost of cybercrimes? Let's have a look at how these figures have kind of increased over the years, I suppose. So going back to 2015, 9 years ago, globally, cybercrime cost organizations around $500 billion, which is a huge amount of money. But as we go through the years, 2019, $2 trillion across the world, 2021, $6 trillion, 2022, a slight increase there, $8 trillion, 2023, which is the latest information we have available to us, the number is literally off the chart. There's been a huge increase in the cost of cybercrime from 2022 to 2023, a 300% increase. In fact, it's gone from 8 trillion to $24 trillion around the world. So it really is a huge risk. Cybercrime is something we're all sort of aware of now, but maybe we take things for granted a little bit. We just assume that everything's going to be okay. And as you can see here, there really is an increasing threat, and people are making huge amounts of money out of cybercrime. So we really need to be aware of it at all times, and cautious and just conscious of the level of damage that it could cause in our personal lives or in our work lives as well. Okay, so what we have coming up on the screen here is some of the highest value cyber attacks that have ever taken place. And you can probably think of one or two of these in your mind already before I bring them up on the screen. So here they are. A couple of them that maybe stand out. WannaCry. So WannaCry was a global ransomware attack that affected hundreds of thousands of computers in 150 countries across the world. The malware exploited a vulnerability in older versions of Microsoft Windows, and it encrypted data. And then the people behind the attack then demanded large ransom payments in Bitcoin to then unencrypt people's data and give them access to it again. Now, that attack disrupted major services all over the world, but one of the biggest victims was, in fact, the NHS here in the UK. And there were many NHS trusts across the country who had machines that were running older versions of Windows, or where security patches hadn't been applied, and it caused a huge amount of problems, of issues. So, that's a real example of something real that happens that can cause a real impact to the way that organizations function. Another one at the bottom of this list, Ashley Madison. Interestingly, in my notes here, it says that Ashley Madison is a dating website. It's probably a little bit more than a dating website, if you know what it is. But in the Ashley Madison attack back in 2015, hackers released personal information of around 32 million subscribers to Ashley Madison, which included their names, their email addresses, and other personal information about them. And that breach had huge, serious consequences on people's personal lives. It caused damage to relationships of people all over the world and had a really big impact. And it was just a big example of something devastating that can happen to really kind of harm people's lives, I suppose. Sony Pictures is an interesting one, which I'll just talk about quickly as well, because Sony as a business, had a hacker or a number of hackers that managed to get inside the Sony network, the Sony organization, and they kind of lay there dormant for almost a year. They did nothing for about a year. They just sat around. Nobody knew they were there. And over that time, they were gathering information around Sony's employees, gathering information about unreleased films, getting clips from unreleased films, which they then released to the big wide world. And it caused a huge amount of trouble and embarrassment and damage to Sony Pictures as well. Now, the interesting thing about that is, they were there for nearly a year doing nothing before that exploit was kind of uncovered, before they started to release information about Sony. Now think about what somebody would learn from you if they were spying on you while you were sitting on your sofa in your front room for a year. Okay, if they had access to what was on your computer and everything you were doing on your computer at home for a year, think about some of the information that they would gather from you just as an individual. And what about if they had access to turn on your camera or your microphone and listen to conversations you were having? It's really quite concerning, the kind of information that people can get for you on a personal level. So think about what that's like on a industrial level, where there's huge amount of data and huge amounts of information being shared as well. So strong passwords and social engineering. Here's a little video which I'm going to play, and see if you can avoid doing the old face palm as we go through this video.
It's great that the government is working on this, but the truth of the matter is we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. The most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on a Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon,
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School
Oh, when did you graduate?
in 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay.
But
Have you had this cat for a while?
yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1.
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6, 12,
95.
95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gemma. 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like
so
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, the important thing is they learned a terrible lesson.
Seems appropriate that we finished with a face palm from that guy at the end there. But how many people, I'm sure there are people on this call who have a password that is a child's name or a pet's name or a partner's name or somewhere that they've visited or something like that, really easy to guess words. And it doesn't take much of this social engineering for people to kind of find out what those passwords are, what those keywords are. And once you've got that keyword, how difficult is it then just to work out what a random combination of numbers might be at the end, or just an exclamation mark at the end, or maybe the first letter is capitalized or something like that. So if you have that keyword that you're using as your password, even if you're using different variations of that keyword with a different number, rather than a 1, you might change it to a 2 or a 3, or an exclamation mark might be changed to a question mark or something. If people know what that keyword is, it's going to be much easier for those cyber criminals to hack your password, to use the tools that are available to them to work out what your password is. And here's a little fun game that we can play, Password Misfortunes, based on a very popular TV game show that I won't mention for copyright reasons. But let's say that we asked 100 people what their password was. Can you guess, just in your mind, what the top passwords are that come out on this list? And you probably can. That's the sad thing. So let's have a look at what's top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the top password that came out on this list. How tricky is that going to be for somebody to guess? And number 2, admin. And I've seen this before in places where I've worked, where administrators have a password of admin, username admin, password admin. That's just basically 0 security on there. Number 3. Another variation of the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And who wants to have a guess at number 9? Sorry, number 9, kind of giving it away there. Number 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So people are being asked to create more complex passwords, longer passwords, and all they're doing is adding numbers to a series of numbers. These passwords aren't secure at all, and anybody can guess these sorts of passwords in no time at all, without even using any of the really kind of complex and sophisticated utilities that hackers can use to break people's passwords. So quite incredible there. In the video, it said the most popular password in America was password. That's actually way down in the list I've got here at number 7. So yeah, there are still lots of people that use the word password as their password, which, in the modern age, I think is quite incredible. So how long do you think it would take for a hacker to break any of those passwords I've just shown you there? Less than a second, fractions of a second. So if it's easy for us to guess, people that I suspect most people on this call are not cyber criminals and not hackers. But if passwords are easy for us to guess, imagine what it's like for the people who are professionals at this, who literally earn their living by breaking people's passwords and hacking into people's accounts. So less than a second, just a fraction of a second to get into those passwords that you can see there. Now, this next table, this shows us an example of how long it would take to crack a password, for a cyber criminal to crack a password based off of certain criteria. And you can see here, generally, the longer a password is and the more complexity there is to that password, whether it's just numbers or whether it's lowercase letters or a combination of numbers and lowercase and uppercase letters, you can kind of get a rough idea here of how long it would take a hacker to use the tools they have available to them to crack your passwords. And you can probably think about what your password is. And I suspect most people have a main password that they use or a variation of quite a lot. Look at this list and see where you kind of fall into this list. And if you're any of the red, probably even of the orange areas, then that's probably not really secure enough, I don't think. Some of the numbers here might look quite long. This is probably a little bit out of date now, even though it says this is from this year, 2024. The tools that the hackers and the cyber criminals are using are becoming more sophisticated all the time as well. So anybody that's got a password that falls into that red category, you might want to think about changing your password maybe sooner or later. If there's anybody that's got a password that falls into that purple category up the top left, then, well, you know, you've probably got a few things to learn, and you need to get those passwords updated as soon as you possibly can. So what should you do? What can you do to help people to reduce the risk of hackers guessing your password, working out what your password is? And there are a number of things you can do. Like, initially, of course, use more complex passwords. Don't use a word. Okay, don't use a word like a child's name or a pet's name or an animal or something like this as your core part of the password, just with a number at the end or a special character at the end or something like that. If you do that, then if somebody gets access to that word, it's going to be very, very simple for them to then work out or crack the rest of your password. So ideally, use a complex password which is longer, you know, a minimum of maybe 12 characters, a mixture of numbers, symbols, uppercase letters, lowercase letters. But when I say uppercase letters and lowercase letters, don't just like capitalize the first letter of the word and then have your word and then finish with a number and an exclamation mark. Mix it up a little bit, you know, do everything you can to try and make it more complicated. Sometimes rather than using an actual word, people might think of a phrase, and they've got a well-known phrase that they have in their mind, but rather than using the actual phrase, kind of use the first letters from each of those words in that phrase. So the word you're writing or the text you're writing is, you know, it doesn't mean anything on its own. It's not an actual real word. If you're using elements in your password that are not real words, then they're going to be harder for people to guess. So try to make it more challenging for people to work out. It might just look like random nonsense if somebody sees it written down, but to you it actually means something. Okay, also it's really, really important to try and use different passwords in different places. And I suspect a lot of people on the call are kind of guilty of this as well. They might have a main password that they use, you know, the password you use to log into your laptop or the password you use to log into your Gmail or whatever it might be. It might be the same sort of password, and there might be different variations of it with different numbers or something like this at the end of it, but really it's the same sort of password, the same keyword that you're using across all sorts of different online services. And think about it, you don't need let's say you're using the same password for Gmail as you are for Facebook, as you are for everything else you're using, as you are for your internet banking, right? You don't need somebody to hack your internet banking account. You just need somebody to hack one of these smaller online services that you've used to maybe print off some photographs or something like this. And if somebody hacks that service, where maybe their security systems they have in place are a little less robust than a bank might be, for example, but if somebody hacks that kind of service, they get access to your password or a variation of your password and your email address, and they can then try that combination of username and password across thousands of other services, and it's a numbers game for these guys, right? You know, they're not going to get hit every single time, but they just need to get hit 1% of the time or 0.1% of the time, and then they're going to find out that it's worthwhile for them. Okay, so really do try, if possible, and I know this might sound tricky, but try to have different passwords for different services that you're using. And that can be cumbersome, right? It can feel like that's really, really tricky to manage. So there are ways to kind of help you get around that, I suppose. One of them is to use password managers. And there are a number of different password manager tools and utilities out there on the market. It might be that your organization has a password manager preferred supplier that they use for work stuff. If your organization has that, then fantastic, because it means that everything you're logging into will have a different password and it'll just be managed by your password manager. And there are also free versions of these password managers as well. So even in your personal life, it might be worth having a look at these password manager utilities. And then essentially the way that works is that the password managers keep unique passwords for all of the different services that you use. And then you just need to remember the one password to unlock your password manager, which will be a super complex one, hopefully. And then once you've logged into your password manager, you'll then get access to all of your other passwords that will kind of automatically populate as you log into different online services. So those password manager utilities can be really quite useful. Like I say, there are free ones, there are paid ones. You know, free doesn't always mean better. Sometimes it might be worth investing a little bit of money yourself into one of these password managers just to make sure that everything is as secure as it can be. Okay, next we're going to have a look at something called social engineering. Now, one thing just to note here as well is, you know, if you've fallen victim to this, or if you know somebody that's fallen victim to a social engineering attack, then it can be quite a difficult ordeal to talk about. It can be quite traumatizing to cover some of this stuff. So if you've fallen victim to it, you know, I'm sorry that we're talking about this, but it's really important that we do, because we need to raise awareness of just how underhand attackers can be and how they can try and trick people into handing over personal or sensitive information. And we need to think about ways that we can protect each other in this kind of space. So social engineering is a term used for a broad range of malicious activities accomplished through human interactions. It uses manipulation to trick users into making security mistakes or giving away sensitive information. Social engineering attacks happen in one or more steps. So a perpetrator first investigates the intended victim to gather necessary background information about them, such as potential points of entry or weak security protocols that they might have. And that's the sort of information they need to then proceed with the attack. Then the attacker moves to gain the victim's trust and to provide a stimulus for subsequent actions that break security practices, such as revealing sensitive information or granting access to critical resources. And the way the cycle sort of works is there's the investigation stage at the start, and this is where the attacker is preparing the ground for the attack. You know, they're identifying potential victims, they're trying to gather information about those victims, and then they're thinking of the attack methods they can use, the hooks they can use to exploit this individual. And then the hook is when they deceive the victim to gain a foothold. They find a way to engage the victim, you know, often through emails that they're sending back and forth to the victim, or it could be other messages. They might spin up some sort of fake story to build trust. They then sort of take control of the interaction and ask the target, ask the victim something that might seem trivial to them, but it just opens up the door, a little crack, which allows the hacker to then gain entry. Then we get to the attack phase. And this is where the attacker would potentially obtain some information over, it could be quite quickly, or it could be over a longer period of time. Potentially they've got access to the target's computer at this stage, and then they can focus on expanding their foothold so that they can't easily be removed if they're discovered. As their position strengthens, they start to execute the attack, which could be disrupting the business, or it could be siphoning data or stealing money from an individual or from a business. And while they're performing this attack, they try to confuse the target by stopping them to seek help for as long as they possibly can. You know, once they're in, they want to stay in and get maximum value out of this exploit. And then they have the exit phase. where they want to try and get away with whatever they've done clearly. So once they've satisfied, they've done everything they want to with the target and their information, they start removing any traces of any malware they might have had running on that person's device. They focus on covering their tracks so that whenever the inevitable, potentially police cases are created afterwards, there's no trace of the attack or of the hacker on that person's device. And if they are still in contact with the target, they start bringing the charade to a natural end. They might think of a reason to stop this communication, this dialogue continuing, and then they walk away, and then they just move on to the next victim, and they start that whole cycle all over and over again. So yeah, this social engineering is quite often a longer term thing where people get sucked into a story that's been created for them, to a world that's been created for them. They want to believe that something good is happening, but quite often, they're being exploited and bad things happen as a result. So how does social engineering work? There's a few examples of it that we're going to cover off here. And this is quite interesting, I think, because this is something that you used to see it all the time. I don't see it so much now, but maybe that's just because I don't look in the same places quite so often now. But you see a message on Facebook or somewhere like this, and it comes up saying, hey, this is awesome. Your superhero name is your first pet's name combined with your favorite color. And then everybody replies with what their first pet's name and favorite color is to come up with their superhero name. Spot Green, Fred Blue, Mr. Snuggle Bunny Purple, which sounds like a harmless bit of fun, maybe, and maybe sometimes it is. But if you think about it, if you're posting that information, then you're posting information about your, what you think is your superhero name, but it's your pet's name and it's your favorite color, and it could be the month you're born, or it could be all sorts of different information like this. But you're handing that information over. And what if that information correlates to something that's in your password? If you're using your pet's name in your password, it's then going to make this hacker's life so much easier to try and hack your password, because they've got all of these keywords, these key phrases that are related to you as an individual. They can then use that information to try and hack into one of your accounts. Okay, so this is an example of social engineering that people can use to gain access to different accounts by quite literally asking people to give up their secret phrases or their personal information. And I'm sure there's people on this call that have joined in with one of these games before. And if you have, just have a think about it. And if your nickname's been shared or your mother's maiden name's been shared, could that potentially cause you a problem? Maybe not today, but at some stage in the future, if the wrong person gets their hand on that information, it could cause you troubles in the future. We then have something called baiting. And here are some quick examples of what we call baiting, where someone's trying to trick you into clicking on a link. In this case, to claim a free iPhone. I've seen many emails like this, and I'm sure people on the call have as well. So often these sorts of emails these days go straight into a spam folder. And if I go into my spam folder on my Gmail or an old Outlook account, or Hotmail account that I've got, I see many of emails exactly like the ones you can see here. So they're often trying to trick you into clicking on a link to claim a free prize. You've won a free iPhone. Click this link. Hey, Amazon user, you've won a free island. So, well, I'm an Amazon user, so I'd quite like a £1,000 gift card or a free iPhone. So I'm going to click the link and see what I can get. And of course, that will then take you to a site where it will ask you for some information, and you'll type in that information, and it could be a username or a password or whatever else. And then people use that information to hack into accounts and cause you trouble. If something looks too good to be true, it probably is. And like I say, these messages usually kind of go through to a spam folder these days, but not always, depending on how your spam filters are kind of set up. They might come through to your inbox. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. And always be aware of these sorts of messages that are trying to, give you something for free, claim this for free. Well done, you've done this. Just for being an Amazon user or a loyal Chrome user or something like this. So yeah, be super cautious and always be skeptical about these sorts of things. There are things you can do, like checking the sender's email address. You can hover over a link and see where that link takes you. And there are little things you can look out with, which we'll circle back on a little bit later in this presentation. Something else that you might have seen before is something called scareware. This is where you might be browsing a site on your laptop, and a pop-up window appears with a message like something you can see here. So it says you've been locked, your computer's been locked, or a virus has been found. And scareware involves being bombarded with these false alarms and fictitious threats. And users are deceived to think that their system is infected with malware, prompting them to potentially install software that has no real benefit other than for the perpetrator of the attack. Or sometimes what it's asking you to install is malware itself. So scareware is sometimes also referred to as deception software or fraudware. They might be other terms you've heard. So common scareware example is these sometimes legitimate looking pop-up banners saying things like your computer may be infected with harmful spyware programs. It's often distributed via spam email messages as well. So you might get these bogus warnings. It makes you download software, or it might make you pay some money or something like this as well. So anything that's asking you to do something quickly, like we've got here, you must do this within 72 hours, otherwise you will be arrested. Anything that's asking you to do something quickly, where there's that kind of level of urgency, is probably a scam. Okay, and you need to be aware that these sorts of things are rarely legitimate. And if anything like this pops up on your work machine, your work device, it's probably worth having a conversation with your IT guys. You might want to just close down the pop-up, but if it's something that pops up more than once, speak to your IT guys, maybe get them to just double check that everything's okay on your work device as well. So yeah, look out for these scareware attacks. Okay, so what do you think that hackers look like? If you were to visualize a hacker in your head, what would a hacker look like? Okay, is it somebody operating from a dark room, maybe with a hood up over their head? They might be typing furiously on their PC with all this complex code that they know how to use. Well, of course, maybe one day that's what hackers look like, but it's not what they look like today. And the little video that I'm going to show you here highlights this.
So I invited a few of the world's best hackers to try to hack me and show me where my vulnerabilities are. And now I'm going to meet them in Las Vegas for DEF CON, the biggest hacker convention of the year. They're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. My husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for usage information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
At gmail.com?
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit. So they just gave you access to my entire cell phone account.
You're gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yes.
Okay, crazy. Does that, you'd like to think that if somebody were to do that on your behalf, that your mobile phone provider or your gas supplier or whoever it might be, your broadband supplier, they wouldn't do that. But can you be really sure? This kind of social engineering can be quite scary. Hackers aren't those guys in the dark rooms with the hoods up type in the complex code anymore. They can literally be anybody that's got a little bit of confidence, who knows what to say and who knows how to play the system a little bit. So yeah, just something to be a little bit extra aware of. Protect your PII, personally identifiable information. So now that you've seen how much damage can be done by a hacker that gets just a little bit of your information, let's talk about your PII, your personally identifiable information. So this information, along with really anything else that helps someone to gain insight about who you are and how you do things, is incredibly sensitive. And a lack of appreciation for how sensitive this information is has allowed cyber criminals to run rampant for decades now, doing countless amounts of damage and costing the world trillions and trillions of dollars. So this term, PII, was introduced as the GDPR initiative came in a few years ago now, and it lays out the rules for companies about what they can and what they can't hold, what information they can and what they can't hold about you, as well as how long they can hold that information for as well. So this is an attempt to help protect people's data and their privacy. But what can you do to protect yourself? What should you do? Well, these are some things. Be suspicious. Why do people need to know personal information about you or about people that you know? If somebody asks you what's that person's pet name or what's that person's child name, do you need to hand over the information? Why are they asking for that sort of information? So be suspicious of people that you don't know asking for sensitive information. Okay. Why do they need to know it? Do they have any malicious intent? Why are they doing these sorts of things? Verify a sender's identity before replying to any emails requesting personal information. So something that appears to be from someone you know could easily be a fake these days. It could be from a spoofed email address. Okay, and it's sad, it doesn't quite seem right, but that person can sometimes, have that information. They could have had their email account hacked themselves, or somebody could just be pretending to be them. So call that person and make sure it's them if they're asking you to send that information. So social engineers really play on good-mannered people. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid not to hand over information. Never be pressured. If somebody's pressuring you to hand information across, that's a good flag. That's a good red flag, right? You shouldn't be being pressured to hand over any personal information. If it's coming from a legitimate source, then people will be asking you to log into your account, not by clicking on a link within an email, but you actually go to that company's account, that company's website, log in and go through the legitimate way. Okay, don't follow the links that might be an illegitimate email. Always assume that it's fake until you've actually contacted contacted the sender themselves, maybe by ringing the public phone number that's on their website rather than the number that's included on an email that's come through to you. So always be suspicious. Always think that there might be something quite not right. How are threats evolving? So phishing, we all know what phishing is. Here's a guy who's caught a swordfish by the looks of it, but of course it's not that sort of phishing we're talking about. It's this sort of phishing, and this term is something that we're all pretty familiar with, I suppose, now as well. But there are different kinds of phishing. We have mass scale phishing. And if we stick with the old word phishing analogy, this is basically where the hackers cast a wide net. Okay, they're throwing their net far and wide to try and catch as many people as they possibly can. It's simply just a numbers game. If I send this phishing attack to 1 million people, to 1 million different email addresses, then only a handful need to fall victim to it, need to not realize what we're trying to do. And it makes it worth my while. I can get their information, I can exploit them, I can get some money out of them, and it's worthwhile doing. So that mass scale phishing attack is still the most common, and we see them, on a daily basis. These sort of attacks are coming through. Next, we have something called spear phishing. Now, this is much more targeted, highly targeted to a specific victim or to a group of people using their personal details. So these might be people who, I don't know, they might fall into a certain demographic, for example, or they might have similar interests. And because we're targeting this phishing attack to specific people, we can maybe make the information that we're sending to them in the first place a little bit more specific as well. We know that you're a customer of this company, or we know that you own this sort of device, or we know that you support this football team or something like that. And if we kind of have that information, we can target those attacks at people. And then we have something called the Moby Dick of phishing attacks, or whaling. Okay, so this is a specialized type of spear phishing attacks where we target a really big victim, you know, a high value victim within an organization, maybe the CEO or the CFO or another executive within that organization, somebody who we have a really almost individual attack at. You know, we can target this message we're sending them, so it's really specific to this individual. But on the off chance they fall victim to it, there can be huge benefits to us as an attacker and huge costs to the individual or the organization involved. So 3 terms to be aware of there: mass scale phishing, spear phishing, and whaling. Okay, but how do we get attacked? Well, usually by email, but it's not always by email. You know, more and more now. It could be through a text message, or it could be through social media messaging or WhatsApp messages even. And especially at this time of year, in the run up to Christmas, where people are ordering lots of stuff online and you're getting lots and lots of parcels delivered to your front door. Like, who on the call, I know I have, who's received a message from Amazon or from DPD or from Royal Mail saying that they've tried to deliver a message, sorry, they've tried to deliver a package, but that package has not been delivered, you know, failed the delivery. Click here to rearrange the delivery, and it takes you to a page and asks you to put in some information, and potentially you might fill that in. And you might think, you know, I have ordered stuff recently. I wasn't necessarily expecting a parcel from DPD, but I guess it could have been delivered from DPD. So maybe I will go on just to double check. Okay, never click on these links that are in emails or text messages or WhatsApp messages, because you don't know where they're taking you. It might take you to a site that looks official, and sometimes it might just be a tiny little, you know, spelling mistake in a URL or something, and that's taking you to a site where it's phishing for that personal information from you. So if you're looking to see if you're missing deliveries from DPD or Royal Mail, you know, go to their sites or go to your Amazon account and look at your order history and look at the tracking options that are kind of included in there as well. Because just because a link looks legitimate doesn't mean it necessarily is legitimate. For example, this lovely link here to the BBC. I can't stop it. Nobody wants to be rickrolled. Okay, so that's the sort of thing, you know, it looks like a link to the BBC, but of course, if I hover over this, you can see it's actually a link to a YouTube video. Now, in that case, it's just a silly little YouTube video, but it could have been to anywhere, could have been to any site that would then try to install some malware onto my machine, or to potentially get me to download something or put in some personal information. Spoofing. So what is spoofing? Spoofing is when somebody or someone tries to pretend to be something they're not in order to kind of gain our confidence, get access to our systems and steal data and steal money or spread malware. We all probably remember emails like this: a nostalgic email, a clumsy fake email, somebody from Africa somewhere who's come into lots of money, but they need to move that money to somewhere. And can you, as a dear friend, help them out in that situation? So hopefully people know now not to kind of come across, not to fall victim to these sorts of emails. But the attackers have moved on a little bit now. So which of these emails is fake? Okay, can you tell? Does anything here look a little bit funny? These kind of emails now look a little bit more realistic. You know, they may look authentic, but there are usually signs that something's not quite right if you know what to look out for. So the ones we can see here, the one from Virgin Media with Virgin Media branding on the left-hand side, you know, the URL, sorry, the address it's coming from, virginmedia@servicedesk.com. You know, does that sound like email address that Virgin Media would use? Well, you know, it doesn't quite look right to me. But if I look at the content of the email itself, you know, you must do this stuff immediately to avoid restrictions. You must do this now. Click here. You know, I'd hover over that link and see what it says. But anything where there's that sort of urgency or potentially spelling errors, that should start raising some flags in your mind. And on the right-hand side, the EE one, your latest EE bill has failed. You know, they might know that you're an EE customer, so it might be a little bit targeted at you. But again, it's asking you to do something urgently. Look at the address this one's come from, alert@bmsend.com. Does that sound like an email address that E will be using? No, probably not. So I'm pretty sure that these messages here are both fake ones. What about these ones? So in Outlook, sometimes, you might click on an email and it gives you a preview of what that email looks like in the right-hand pane. And the preview here, if you can't read or see this email, click here to enable image viewing. That doesn't quite look right to me, but somebody maybe, a little bit less tech savvy might think, okay, I'll just click on that to see what the email is. And that, of course, is a link, which then takes you to a web page, and then, bad things could start happening pretty much straight away. The Trust Wallet one at the bottom left-hand side, the email address it's coming from kind of looks almost legitimate, support@trustwallet.com, but you can see the spelling mistake, Trust Wallet rather than Trust Wallet. That kind of shows us that there's something not quite right there. And the Amazon one, well, actually, the Amazon one here is that's the legitimate example. So here I can see it's coming from an email address, the @amazon.co.uk, which sounds like it probably is legitimate. Okay, it's asking us to essentially log into our account to check some details rather than clicking on links in the email itself. So look out for these little examples of where things might be trying to trick you. What should I do? Okay, so make sure you know how to check a link or an email address to make sure it's genuine. If you don't know how to do it, then speak to your IT guys, speak to your IT teams, and they'll help you learn how to do that. Okay, before clicking on a link, there are ways you can check it. Just hover over the link and you can usually see the URL it's going to take you to, and you can usually tell if it looks legitimate or not. Don't click on anything you don't recognize within a message until you're sure it's safe to do so. If you click on that message, it could take you to a site, and before you even do anything on that site, potentially there could be code injected into your browser or something that could cause damage to your device as well. So be really careful about clicking on these links. And if you're not expecting an email and it doesn't quite seem right, then there's a good chance that it is fake. So check it yourself. But like I said before, if you're not sure, if you're not confident about what signs to look out for, then speak to your IT guys and they will give you some hints and tips about things that you can do to check if an email is legitimate, come from a legitimate source, or to check if a URL is legitimate or if it could potentially cause you any danger if you were to click on that link. Okay, other things that you can do. So the single biggest threat that organizations kind of fall victim, I suppose, to is just having that simple username and password authentication method. And that's what you should look to try and avoid. Yeah, anywhere where there's just a username and password authentication to get access to something, that is a danger. And what we kind of try to enforce now is wherever possible, have this multi-factor authentication. You might have an authenticator app on your device so that you try and log into something with your username and password, and then you might get prompted to enter a code from an app on your phone or to click a link from an app in your phone or something like this. Or you might get a text message sent to you with a single-use code. These extra layers of authentication that you can use to help protect your information. And there's free services now, the likes of Facebook now. If you log into Facebook from a different device, then that multi-factor authentication is set up for that extra layer of security. And if Facebook are doing that for you to access your Facebook account, then you should probably make sure you're doing that for people to access corporate information as well, right? You want to have that extra layer of security before people can access corporate information. Report suspicious emails. Quite often organizations have a little button in Outlook you can click on just to report a suspicious email, or there might be an email address you can forward an email to within your organization to report those suspicious emails. And make sure you're up to date and up to speed with your company policies on these sorts of things as well. You need to make sure that your employees know what your corporate policies are and what people should do if they receive a suspicious email or an attachment or a link. And if you're unsure, again, speak to the IT team within your organization and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. When you're out and about, there are some challenges. Connecting to unsecured Wi-Fi is a good one. If you're connected to an unsecured Wi-Fi network in a coffee shop or a hotel lobby or something like this, or a McDonald's, I don't know, these sorts of places that offer free Wi-Fi, use a VPN. Okay, there are plenty of VPN services available to you, but those unsecured Wi-Fi networks can easily become compromised, right? So you don't want there to be a kind of man in the middle attack where somebody basically sets up home in between where you are and the information you're trying to access, and they can pull out the information that you're transmitting, and they can gain access to some information that way. So use a VPN if you can, especially if you're accessing sensitive information or work information. Okay. Issues with devices getting lost and stolen if those devices don't have passwords on them, or bring your own devices that are accessing corporate information. Really, if the device is going to be accessing any kind of corporate information, you really could do with having some kind of device management software on that device, and that will allow you to enforce minimum levels of security, minimum password lengths that need to be on that device. Or you could set up multi-factor authentication on those BYOD devices if people are trying to access work information. And if a device is lost or stolen, then you could, wipe all your corporate information or remove access to all your corporate information from that device. So that device management stuff can be really quite important. Things like inadequate backup and recovery, or sending confidential data from their own accounts. Make sure people know what applications they should be using for work stuff. If you're providing them with access to SharePoint or OneDrive, you need to make sure that people aren't using their personal Dropbox, their personal Google Drive account to send and receive corporate information. And it might be that you have restrictions on file sizes that you can send via email. You need to make sure your employees then know what alternatives they should be using, rather than just thinking, oh, I can just jump on WeTransfer or something like this just to send that information across because it will be easy. Now, it might be easy, but that doesn't mean it's safe and secure, and there could be risks associated with that as well. So just make sure your employees, your users know what they should be using for these kind of activities. Okay, what does a modern attack look like? So this is an attack in the world of AI. This is the last video we'll look at now.
Hello.
Hi, my love. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
So I need your help. I've just got home and I've literally got the biggest bill come through, and I just don't know what to do. So scared.
Oh,
Is there any chance you could send me some money or something and I will pay you back? I would just need a couple of £100 just to get me through the next couple of days. Or I could pay the bill with your card and then pay you back when I have the money. I'm so sorry to ask this of you. I just didn't know who else to go to.
Yeah, no, yeah, I will do, of course. Yeah, I'll give you some money, definitely.
Meg, this is all a joke. It's not true. I'm so sorry. We're doing this thing. That's basically, it was AI using my voice.
Oh shit! Oh my, what?
I know.
No, that was actually so real. I'm not even joking. What?
So that's crazy. That's an example of how cyber criminals can use AI to their advantage now, and it does make it hard to trust anybody. So if people can replicate your voice like that and make your voice say whatever they want them to, whatever they want it to, that can be quite dangerous, quite scary. So look out for calls from unknown numbers or from withheld numbers, or maybe emails from people that wouldn't normally email you. I've come into this situation. I need some money transferred to me now. Those sorts of things could be again that little red flag that just raises to think that something doesn't quite feel right. That example was audio, but there are videos that do this sort of thing now as well. Videos where AI can replicate what somebody looks like and what somebody sounds like. And there's an example of the money-saving expert, Martin Lewis, who's in several legal battles with social media organizations to try and take down AI-generated videos of him that have been circulating around on social media. And these videos try and encourage people to sign up to certain services or to invest in certain products. And they do look quite realistic. I wouldn't say they looked 100% authentic. If you know what to look for, again, they kind of don't quite look like they're real. And if you do follow Martin Lewis as well, you know that he makes a big thing about this. And if you see something, then the chances are it's probably not genuine. But yeah, definitely something worth looking out for. So in summary, this is what we've covered today. We've talked about strong passwords, things you can do to make your passwords stronger. We've talked a bit about social engineering, how the threats are evolving and becoming more sophisticated. We've looked at some of the different security options that you have. We've talked about personally identifiable information and how you want to make sure that nobody really that you don't know is getting access to information about your personal life and your children's names and your pets' names and these sorts of things. We've talked a bit about security as well, up security when you're out and about, and that pretty much wraps up the presentation from my point. So I think I'll move on to this slide here, and I'm going to hand back over to Eve and Ricky and see if we have any questions that we can answer.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for that really great presentation, Andy. Appreciate it. And yes, we've had some questions come through. So one of the questions we had is, what's the best way to make staff care about protecting their work accounts? Because there needs to be that passion and care to protect their work accounts, doesn't there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, the messaging is really important. You need to make sure that your staff know about the impact that these attacks can have. There's a phrase that a former boss of mine used to use. He used to use the phrase "death by 1,000 cuts," which I've heard in other situations as well. But when you're thinking about cybersecurity, you might think that you clicking on a link and giving away some work information isn't going to cause much damage to your organization, and it might not. In the grand scheme of things, it might be a little nick that causes a minor inconvenience that gets sorted out very, very quickly. But if you think that happens, if that happens time and time and time again, and people right across your organization are doing the same sort of thing, then those little nicks, those little cuts add up, and they become quite severe, and they can have a real detrimental impact on how that business operates. So if you want employees to care about your organization and how your company grows and thrives and these sorts of things, and if they understand the damage that can be caused, and if they're maybe given examples of real disruption that's been caused to organizations off the back of this sort of stuff, then maybe that's a thing that you can use to help encourage them to be on board. You need to understand the importance of keeping your corporate information and your personal information secure, because if not, it can have really damaging impacts to our companies. And if that happens, then ultimately that's going to affect potentially your job, your Christmas bonus, anything else like this as well. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I know a lot of people are concerned that things are changing every day. There are new threats coming in all the time. So how can people stay updated with the latest and make sure that it is the latest threats that they're focusing on?
Yeah, so if people are using antiviruses or maybe things like Microsoft Defender, if they're kind of in the Microsoft ecosystem, they have blog posts, they have websites where you can go on and you can kind of keep track of these sorts of things as well. So you can sign up to alerts, you can see the different sorts of threats that might be coming in. Yeah, it's such a broad conversation, I suppose. But those are the sorts of things that you can do, kind of make yourself members of these blog posts, message boards, and then you'll get the kind of information coming through to you then.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Fab. Well, thank you for your presentation. And before we drop off, we're just going to take a sorry, I can't talk anymore. A little look at how CSG can help. And I'll hand over to Ricky.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously the first stage is get in contact with us. We'll come out and we'll have a review with you, and we'll sit down with you, understand your requirements, look at your cyber security in general, and look at where we can help you. At that next stage, and we'll obviously be involved with configuring the systems as an online platform, and obviously with your specifications and requirements, we can then implement that and roll that out then company wide to ensure your staff are having the correct training and your cybersecurity is up to date. We're noticing insurance companies are asking a lot more now to be a lot more cyber awareness in your organization. So we're finding a few more questions being asked on your insurances, just to make sure that you are doing what you can to assist and help protect your business. Obviously, once we've assisted and rolled out the services to you, ongoing training will be provided by CSG. We'll roll it out to the end users, and obviously from that we can get reporting generated for yourselves either once a month or once a quarter, so you can see the staff, where they are with training and, where they're failing. So at least then you can keep up to date then, with your staff. And obviously reporting, as I said earlier, is a big part of that to help you to have a clear vision and to see where, your business and your staff is actually failing in.
Now let's see some cyber training in action and see how it has actually helped one of our clients. So this is from Kaylee Jeffries at 30 Park Place, and she discussed the phishing simulations that she did as part of CSG's service. So she described about the interactive training has improved their staff's awareness and ability to identify phishing threats, and they've empowered their employees with the knowledge and tools to recognise it. And I did a video case study with Kaylee from 30 Park Place, and we delved into how the training videos were very fun to get that competitive dynamic between your employees as well. It's really fun to be able to say that, oh, well, I've scored higher than you in the Phish Threat Training. So a really good part of the service to bring in. So yeah, that's everything from us. Thank you so much for joining today. And of course, if there's any questions about how we can protect you as we move on into 2025, which I can't believe I'm saying, please contact your account manager at CSG or email sales@csgrp.co.uk if you are new to us here. And of course, you can always call us. And do please connect with us on LinkedIn, because we will be posting all of our upcoming webinars that we are hosting and we've got planned for 2025. And there will be regular updates of all of these fun activities that we can do as well. So thank you. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you,
Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much.